Hare Krishna. Yeah. Yes. So, Manish Pruitt yesterday got the question. I was mentioning about how with our material senses, even the thoughts of the mind are material. So then how exactly can we perceive transcendence? So even when we think about Krishna, when we chant Krishna's names, when we study the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, so are we actually perceiving Krishna or not? So this is analyzed in the Shrutistava. Shrutistava is I think the 88th chapter of the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. It is prayers by the personified Vedas. And in that Parikshit Maharaj asks the question to Shukadeva Goswami, if our senses are material and the Supreme Lord is transcendental, then how can we perceive that Supreme Lord? And Parikshit Maharaj actually tells an incident when Narad Muni had asked this question to Narnarayan Rishi. And then Narnarayan Rishi narrate another incident when this was happened. So then they say that actually, they tell another incident when the Lord Vishnu was sleeping, fast asleep, and then the Vedas came there to awaken him, and they recited the prayers. So those prayers which are recited by the Vedas to the Lord to awaken him from his mystic slumber, they are known as the prayers of the personified Vedas, Shrutistava in Sanskrit. And there this question is analyzed, and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives his commentary to this section very systematically, and he explains that though the material senses by their own effort cannot perceive the Supreme Lord, but the scriptures give certain descriptions about the Supreme Lord. So those descriptions are given for us more as a compass, as a direction for thought. So when we think about the Supreme Lord according to scriptural directions, for example, when the scriptures tell us that Krishna is a youth with a bluish black complexion like that of a monsoon cloud, then we may think of a youth and we may think of a monsoon cloud, and we may try to combine these two images together and try to conceive of Krishna. So the concatenation of two mental images is not the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But when we try to think about Krishna according to scriptural direction, then that subordination, that service attitude pleases Krishna. And then Krishna by his will chooses to manifest to us at the spiritual level. So there is the Atma, there is the Mana, and there is the Indriya, the eyes, the ears, the senses. So say when I am looking at the deity, there is a physical contact between the form of the deity and my eyes. Now depending if my mind is if I am not very attentive, absorbed, then there is just the contact and nothing further happens. Even that contact is purifying because it's Krishna manifesting. But still that is not as potent as, say, if I try to think about it, if I concentrate, then there is not just the contact between the deity and the senses, but also the mind gets involved over there. And that perception enters the mind. There is greater penetration, greater purification that results by that. But still, Krishna's presence has not yet been evoked. It is when we sincerely try to serve Krishna according to the scriptural direction by taking darshan of his deity, then if Krishna is pleased by our endeavor, then Krishna manifests at the spiritual level. The soul has his own capacity for perception, and at that spiritual level when Krishna manifests, that is called as Spurti. Spurti is self-manifestation. So there is that famous verse, Atah Sri Krishna Namadi Na bhaved grahayam indriyai sevon mukhe jivhadau swayameva spuratyada. So spuratyada, swayameva, by his own will. So that's why when Krishna is manifested at the level of the mind, that means we are thinking about Krishna, that is not necessarily a spiritual manifestation. Now because those thoughts are about Krishna, they are purifying. So somebody else might think of a sports star or a movie star or some cartoon character, And those may also manifest as concepts at the mental, as conceptions, as thoughts, images at the mental level. They, from a ontological point of view, ontological means from the existential point of view, they are non-existent people. So at the mental level, they are just thoughts, conceptions. But because they are not connected with reality, leave alone the supreme reality, those thoughts don't purify us. Although at an emotional level, some people may get moved and affected much more. Somebody is a fan of Sherlock Holmes, so if that person thinks about Sherlock Holmes, then that person may get excited. And we may think about Krishna and we may not get excited about Krishna. Because at the conditioned level, the attraction to material things is often higher than to the spiritual things among sadhakas. So the Swayameva Spurutyada is when actually revelation takes place. So when we chant the holy names of Krishna and when we study scripture and take darshan, it is not that we are directly thinking of Krishna. We are trying to think about Krishna according to scriptural direction, and the thinking about Krishna really happens when Krishna manifests himself. Is it clear? Any other questions? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So now let's move forward to 14.17. So yesterday we discussed about the effects of the modes. So in that, first we discussed what happens when a person dies in the various modes. Then we discussed about the long-term effect, and then we discussed the long-term effect was post-death. Then medium-term effect. Then we will discuss the short-term effect. That was this one. Karmana sukrit rajasastu phalam dukkham. I explained this elaborately yesterday. Now we will discuss about another effect, the immediate effect that results to some extent. Sattvat sanjayate jnanam, sattvat sanjayate jnanam, rajaso lobha evacha, pramad moha tamaso, bhavato ajnanam evacha. So sattvat sanjayate, from sattva is born jnanam. So a very significant point here is Krishna is talking, now it doesn't say abhyasat sanjayate jnanam. It is not that just by study knowledge will emerge. He says sattvat sanjayate. So this knowledge that is talked about is not just a matter of intellectual processing. It is a knowledge that is actually a matter of internal assimilation. And that requires a lifestyle. So there may be mundane philosophers who may know about the conception of the soul as given in Vedantic literature better than what we may also know. But if their lifestyle is in the mode of passion, then all that knowledge will just be, as Srila Prabhupada would say, philosophy without religion is mental speculation. So it will just be mental speculation for them. So nowadays, in the West and increasingly in India, there is the fad of being religious without being spiritual without being religious. You say, I'm spiritual but not religious. In fact, this is so common that it has spawned its own acronym called SBNR. So SBNR is a separate statistical group, spiritual but not religious. And their idea is that we should be open-minded. This is the article which I am writing in the upcoming BTG about spiritual but not religious. So their idea is that we should be open-minded. We should not commit ourselves to any one dogma, one institution, one school of thought, and certainly not any institutionalized religion. Be open-minded. And wherever you get spiritual experiences, you take those spiritual experiences and move forward. So, certainly we should not be close-minded. That is true. But at the same time, if we actually want to get spiritual experiences, we need to commit ourselves to some process. So the idea is that if we consider spirituality, there is a difference between spiritual experience and a spiritual state of consciousness. A spiritual experience is something which comes and goes. Even materialistic people may sometimes come to a temple or sometimes go to some holy place and they may feel something very deep, something peaceful, something very profound. So that's a spiritual experience. So spiritual experience is something which may come and go. But what a serious spiritualist wants is not just a spiritual experience, but he wants a steady spiritual state. And to get a steady spiritual state, one has to follow a process that transforms. So the idea of spirituality without religion is that one just shops around for spiritual experiences. And shopping around for spiritual experiences doesn't lead to anything lasting. So difference between spiritual experience and spiritual state. The spiritual experience is something which comes and goes. Spiritual state is something that lasts. And so when Krishna is talking about jnana over here, sattvat sanjayate jnanam, it is when a person lives in the mode of goodness, then that person attains the real jnana, the assimilated, internalized jnana. Otherwise one might get some experiences, and those experiences are valuable, but they will not necessarily by themselves be transformational. They will come and go. So therefore Krishna makes it very clear that there has to be a process that has to be followed. So if one tries to be simply spiritual without being religious, it's like trying to be healthy without trying to take a medicine. It's trying to be healthy without taking a medicine. Say, I want to be healthy, but I don't want to take any medicines. I want to be spiritual, but I don't want to be religious. So what does religious actually mean? If by religious just people understand, okay, you have to believe in follow some rituals and believe in some dogmas, that is a caricature of religion. Actual religion is a set of practices that transforms us, that enables us to develop love for God. So this is our goal. And to get to that, there has to be a following of a process. So therefore, just spiritual experiences may be valuable but not transformational. If you want it to be transformational, then there has to be a spiritual process. So wanting to be spiritual without being religious is like wanting to be healthy without taking a medicine. It doesn't work. Sattvat sanjayate jnanam. And this was one of Srila Prabhupada's prominent contributions, that Srila Prabhupada actually did not just share Vedic concepts with Western people. No, he actually transplanted the culture so that people could get transformational experiences. And Srila Prabhupada was flexible in terms of people can cook according to their own culture and nature, and they can offer that food to Krishna. Principle of offering food to Krishna is universal. The specific variations can be there. Srila Prabhupada also said you can wear the clothes that are considered normal and respectable from the secular perspective whenever it's required. But actually whatever the dress that we are wearing, we should serve Krishna. But wherever it was not necessary to change, Srila Prabhupada said that stick to the traditional Vedic culture, because that helps to create a spiritual atmosphere which is conducive for inner transformation. So that's why Sattvat Sanjayate Jnanam. Krishna describes Then rajaso lobha evacha. So just the presence. So now here Krishna is talking, as soon as the mood of goodness comes up, actually one starts becoming inclined towards knowledge. One may not immediately get knowledge, but one becomes inclined towards knowledge. Actually speaking, when Krishna talks about the 4 kinds of people who come to him, who are those 4 kinds of people? Artho, Jigyasur, Artharthi, Jnani. Okay, yes. So actually speaking, roughly, it's not a very accurate correlation, but one of the characteristics of Shudra is Shochati, one who is always lamenting. And that to lament is a sign of the mode of ignorance. So Artho is the characteristic of a person in the mode of ignorance. Artharthi, I want more. That is the characteristic of somebody in passion. And Jigyasu is the characteristic of a person in goodness. Because at the level of goodness, one, even if one does not have knowledge right now, one is inclined towards knowledge. I want to know more. What is all this about? And actually the Jnani which Krishna talks about over there is a person who is transcended. He has not yet come to devotional service, but if we later on, next verse what Krishna talks about him is, such a person is situated at least in Atma Jnana and has some conception that the absolute truth may be personal. So Jnani is almost transcended. So of course, it is also possible that Artharthi can become Artho, and Jigyasu can also become distressed at some time. That's why it's not a watertight classification, but it's a general direction of mental orientations. Now, in this, the Jigyasu, the person who is, Prabhupada uses the word Jigyasu as inquisitive. No, another word is curiosity, curious. So, the person who is curious about higher spiritual things is generally in the mode of goodness. Now, everybody is curious, but most people are curious about very trivial and petty things. People may be curious about have the stocks gone up or gone down. I say, what is the score of the cricket match? Or they will be curious about some news, what is happening in the political field, who's likely to win the next elections, or what is happening in the India-Pakistan border front. Okay, these maybe have their importance, but they are just mundane curiosities. They have got nothing to do with the big questions of life. So in a sense, a person in goodness has a sense of wonder about living. What do you mean by sense of wonder about living? Because if we think about life, even if we don't have necessarily a spiritual perspective, it's remarkable. We are living on a particular planet which is, in a sense, just floating in space. Not a small chunk, huge lump of huge mass is floating in space. And here we are living, and our whole body and the balance that is required to sustain life is extraordinary. So from the material point of view, if somebody tells you that, I know a person who is running at 1,000 kilometers per hour around a ball of fire. Why is he running around like that? What is going on? But the earth is running around the sun at an extremely high speed, and we are situated on that earth. So even from a material point of view, things are quite extraordinary. It's like, sometimes in magic shows we see that it is shown as if a magician, he has a hat, and he just moves the hat and a rabbit comes out of the hat. Isn't it? And they say, oh, you produced a rabbit, how did you produce a rabbit? Generally some sleight of hand, it's some trickery. But then, it's actually speaking from the material point of view, suddenly this whole universe has come out. And imagine that the rabbit has been produced. So just as a rabbit has been produced by a magician, so suddenly it's like, a whole universe has been produced. And we are like tiny germs on the hair of that rabbit. We are just small beings on this vast universe. So even from a material point of view, who am I? Where did I come from? Where does this world come from? These are important questions. And people who are in goodness, they ask these questions. Now Einstein said that the womb of all science as well as the womb of all philosophy is a sense of wonder. A sense of wonder. That, okay, what is life all about? How do things work? So that sense of wonder actually leads to knowledge, and that sense of wonder can be present only when there is goodness. So Sattvat Sanjayate Jnanam. So now that sense of wonder, if you remember we discussed, it can go externally towards nature, it can go internally towards psychology, or it can go vertically upwards towards revelation. So when we study scripture, it is not that we reject the world. The whole concept of Shastra Chakshu or Jnana Chakshu is that, okay, we look up to understand through Krishna's perspective, but then we look at the world also. And then we see it in new light. We actually not only see the world with a sense of wonder, but we see the world with a sense of understanding, where the sense of wonder, the sense of mystery is slowly unraveled. And that's how the person in the mode of goodness rejoices. We discussed earlier, what are the two bondages in the way of goodness? Sukha Sangena and Jnana Sangena. So Sattvat Sanjayate Jnanam. So this Jnana leads to a sense of excitement, a sense of fulfillment when one understands. So we may, in our modern society, if people want to think of happiness, they may generally think of, say, some parties or some honeymoons, or they may think of their favorite sports star lifting up the World Cup and they themselves dancing all around. That is the conception of happiness that they have. But actually, when one is trying to understand something, and when one gets an insight, when actually something is difficult, one understands it, the sense of jubilation, the sense of illumination, the sense of satisfaction that comes by that is extraordinary. Most of us know the story of Archimedes. He was trying to find out how to detect whether gold is pure or not. And he was in his bathing tub, and suddenly he understood, Eureka! He just leapt up, and even without any clothes, he just ran to his king's palace to tell him what he had learnt. So why was that? Because actually that understanding that comes is very, in a sense, intoxicating. So now if that understanding is separate from God and spirituality, then that can become a cause of bondage. But on the spiritual journey also, if we seriously try to study and gain understandings, then that understanding can be very, very enriching for our spiritual life. Krishna talks about it. Nahi jnanena sadrusham pavitramiha vidyate tatsvayam yoga samsiddha kalena atmani vindati. So in 4.38 he says atmani vindati. One will rejoice within oneself. And he says this jnana, there is nothing as pure as this. Nahi jnanena sadrusham pavitramiha vidyate. Nothing as pure as this. And over time, one will relish this more and more. So this is Sattvat Sanjayate Jnanam. Then Rajaso Lobha Evacha. So the characteristic of Rajoguna is Lobha. I want more. We discussed about this yesterday elaborately. So modern society is characterized by three primary activities: work, watch, remember, shop. Work, watch, shop. You work, then you want to relax, you come back and watch TV. And when people watch TV, they see so many advertisements and they think, I want to go and shop this. So work, watch, shop. WWS. Worldwide stupidity. That's how it is. So, Rajaso Lobha Evacha. And Pramada Moham Tamaso Bhavato Ajnanam Evacha. So, the Tamoguna, it characterizes Pramada Moha, and Krishna wants to tell that this is the mode which should be completely discouraged. That's why Ajnanam Evacha. So, he actually gives only one describer for the other two modes, Jnana and Lobha, but he's Pramada Moha and Ajnana. He says these are the Bhavato, they result from the mode of ignorance. So Srila Prabhupada explains that, and he's talking about Rajaso Lobha Evacha. Where is this point? So Prabhupada explains that actually if we want to be happy, we cannot become happy by gaining more and more. Activities in the mode of passion are simply miserable. So why is that? Actually, when I am in the mode of passion, I may feel, oh, if I just get a new car or a new house or a better job or a promotion or an increment, then I'll become happy. Now that is the mentality, and people strive very hard to get that. Most of the time they don't succeed. But even if they succeed, the problem is that it is not that particular thing that was lacking. It was the mentality, the psychology of looking for what one is lacking. And by acquiring what one doesn't have, that mentality doesn't change. See, in the mode of passion, because the characteristic is lobha, one constantly keeps looking for what one does not have. And I may feel, because I don't have this, I'm not happy. If I get this, I'll become happy. But the problem is, even after I get that, the mentality of looking for what I don't have, the mentality of greed has not changed. And that's why I don't become satisfied. No matter what I have or what I don't have, if I have the mentality of looking for what I don't have, I will never become satisfied. That's why Srila Prabhupada writes that if a person wants to become happy, that person cannot become happy just by earning more money. We need money for living in the world, but just by earning more money, the person's mentality will not change from passion to goodness. That will change only by purification. That comes by Krishna consciousness. So, only when a person becomes purified and comes to Krishna consciousness, then the person understands that, okay, actually these more things, they are not going to make me happy. One becomes free from greed. And then one can understand, okay, these are my needs and these are my greeds. Let me put aside my greed and let me focus on my needs. So that's why at a material level, it's just a no-win situation. Material life, when people are trying to pursue and become happy, it's a no-win situation. Because no matter how much they get, that mentality of wanting more doesn't get cured by that. That will get cured only by spiritual purification. That's why it's like a game that people can't win and they can't stop playing. Suppose a person is a boxing match and has to fight with a formidable boxer, and he's told that he's such a small person that there's no way he can defeat that big boxer. But he's told, you are not allowed to go out of this ring. So for the rest of your life, what do you have to do? Just keep getting beaten, keep getting beaten. So life in the mode of passion is like that. Because one has so many desires, one cannot possibly fulfill the desire. That desire, the craving is like a giant. You cannot bring it down. You cannot satisfy it. But on the other side, we cannot get rid of it also. Because even if I get what I want, I am still in that same ring. So what happens is, I still have that same mentality. I still want more and more and more. So material life in the mode of passion is like a game which one can't win and one can't quit. It's simply miserable. That's why the only way is, if you feel when people feel greedy or people feel lusty, then the solution is not just indulgence. The solution is actually tolerance, so that one can come to transcendence. Indulgence will never solve the problem. So let's conclude with this point here. So I'm going to explain this point now. Rajaso lobha evacha. Because the craving for more never goes away, we can never be satisfied no matter how much more we get. So the way to peace is not through indulgence, but through tolerance and transcendence. So if I want to become peaceful, how will I become peaceful? Not by fulfilling the craving, but by tolerating the craving. Tolerate it, and if I keep tolerating it, I rise to a higher mode, then I become free from that craving. So tolerance and transcendence. Any questions about this? Okay. this knowledge material or transcendental? The word jnana can have many meanings. Just in the previous chapter, Krishna has categorically defined what he refers to by jnana. Etad jnanam iti proktam ajnanam yatadonyatha. And before that's in 13.12. And before that also in 13.3 he says kshetra gayor jnanam yatta jnanam matam mama. So now there he is referring primarily to either transcendental knowledge or the process by which one acquires transcendental knowledge. Now there is Krishna in the 18th chapter. Krishna will talk about jnana in sattva-guna, rajoguna, tamoguna. That's true. Now here when Krishna is going to talk about he's talking about a knowledge that is born through goodness. So obviously that cannot be knowledge in passion or ignorance. At the very least that has to be knowledge in goodness. And the focus of this whole chapter, as we will see from the beginning, is Krishna has said bhuya evam, he says actually sarge pinopajayante pralayana vithinticha. You want to go beyond the modes. So in goodness itself one does not get complete transcendental knowledge, but goodness sets the ground for transcendental knowledge. And here actually speaking, even material knowledge, when one has to apply it, if one wants to apply principles of goodness, for example, say Stephen Covey talks about 7 habits of highly successful. So he may talk about seek first to understand, then to be understood. Now a person in the mode of passion or ignorance cannot do that. That person just wants to impose his or her own will on others. So even to apply holistic principles for living at a material level, one needs some amount of sattva-guna. This is the problem with many self-help books. The principles that they talk about may be sensible, may be valuable also. But knowing those principles alone doesn't enable one to get the willpower to apply those principles. For that one needs a process for inner transformation. So sattvat sanjayate jnanam refers to, even in worldly life, people value not just theoretical knowledge, they value experience. Isn't it? When people want to go into companies. Why experience? Because on the field, knowledge is different, is deeper, is more valuable than just theoretical knowledge. So that's in the material field also. So Krishna is telling over here that sattvat sanjayate jnanam. This refers to primarily the knowledge in the mode of goodness, which, as we discussed earlier, is the knowledge of artist, a philosopher, a poet, a writer, and of course a transcendentalist, one who is seeking transcendence. So these people, it's a general sattva-guna, is at the very least at the jnanamay or even at the vijnanamay level. So these are elevated people when we're talking about. So for this kind of knowledge, some amount of living is required. Without that, this knowledge doesn't become very deep. So we discussed earlier also that there are certain principles which may not be directly relevant to the context of that verse, but they apply to our devotional context. Like I gave the example of Yajna-shishta Ashina Santo. That is primarily talking about karma kanda, but Prabhupada tells us we can apply it to bhakti also. Similarly, sattvat sanjayate jnanam, it refers to sattva-guni knowledge, but that principle applies even to bhakti. That principle that knowledge will come through sattva. Even Srila Prabhupada writes in response to in 3.36 Arjuna's question is Athakena prayuktoyam, what causes people to sinful activities. In 3.37 Prabhupada in the purport of Kamesha Krodesha says that actually one has to rise from passion to goodness by the prescribed way of living and acting. The prescribed way of living and acting, that is what? Sattva, isn't it? By that one will come to sattva. One will understand how lust is an enemy, and then one will fight off that enemy. So that principle applies even to the devotional path and to spiritual knowledge. Okay? It's clear, or you have something in mind? Material knowledge is not permanent. Are you referring to spiritual knowledge at our level of consciousness, or are you referring to material knowledge? If we develop knowledge, it is material. See, I was asked this question on my website. Can we experience spiritual happiness in the conditioned stage? So that person, we had a long discussion. So he said that no, we can't experience because the happiness that we experience is temporary, whereas spiritual happiness is permanent. So that is true. And then the person said, actually spiritual happiness cannot be experienced with material senses. And our senses, as long as we are material existence, are material, so we cannot experience spiritual happiness. So now, this is not our Acharya's explanation. Yes, we cannot experience lasting spiritual happiness right now because we are not at the spiritual state of consciousness. So this is ignorance, passion, goodness. This is transcendence. Because our steady state consciousness is not transcendental right now. That's why we don't steadily experience spiritual happiness. But our consciousness moves up sometimes. Sometimes by Krishna's inspiration from within, sometimes by our resolute determination in chanting, sometimes by the sheer force of the devotee association. Our consciousness gets dragged upward and there are peaks of our consciousness that touch transcendence. And we get devotional experience at that time. But we are also following a process by which our consciousness will get raised upwards. So right now, just as our experience of spiritual happiness is not lasting, similarly our experience of spiritual knowledge is also not lasting. That's why sometimes I may remember and I may think seriously, I am not the body, I am the soul. But then after some time, I may just start thinking, okay, yes, I want to enjoy at the body level. It doesn't matter whether I am the body or the soul, I want to enjoy right now. So that may happen because we have not yet realized it. But we get glimpses of it. By Sattva Guna, we are moving in that direction. By cultivating Sattva Guna, we are moving towards that becoming our steady state of consciousness. Bhakti Rasamrita talks about a sthayi bhav, a steady spiritual emotion that we will attain over a period of time by the practice of bhakti. Okay. So now, Krishna will give a summary of the general direction of what people will go. Urdhvam gachanti sattvastha, madhye tishtanti rajasaha, jaganya guna vrittistha, adho gachanti tamasaha. So it's very simple. Urdhva is upwards, gachanti is go, sattvastha. So those situated in goodness go upwards. Madhye tishtanti. The Rajasa they stay in the middle, and Jaghanya guna vrittistha. So Jaghanya is actually abominable. Those who are having this abominable mode of ignorance, guna vrittistha, adho gachanti. They go down. So now this up and down can refer either to lokas or to species also. So downs can mean either lower planets or it can mean lower species. It can refer to animal species also. Now, after describing this general direction, is the earthly planetary system the only place for karma? Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that the law of karma, in terms of, say, this action will produce this reaction, or rather every action will have certain reactions. That is in the earthly planetary system. But that doesn't mean that others are entirely free to do what they want. See, other are the other living beings. For example, Indra in Svarga. When he enjoys with the Apsaras, there is no bad karma that happens over there. But that does not mean that Indra is entirely exempt from responsibility for his actions. Indra, if he offends the sages, has to suffer. If he is careless in battle, if he gets defeated, he suffers. So the principle of being accountable for our actions applies everywhere, throughout the universe. But the law of karma as we know it, where every single action bears a reaction, that is primarily in the earthly planetary system. So it's like, if you imagine that visualize the circumference of accountability is much smaller in the earth. That means every single action we are accountable for it. Whereas the circumference for accountability is much greater in the heavenly planets. There is a wide variety of actions that they can do without having to bear karmic consequences for that. But ultimately, everywhere, people are responsible for their actions. But certain actions, they are not directly, immediately responsible. They are given because by the past karma, they have done the punya by which they are also allotted certain kind of enjoyment. But then the disadvantage in Swarga is, one cannot create further punya also. So just by being in Swarga, one cannot create further punya. Okay, so the demigods, when they please the sadhus or they please the sages and they get the kingdom back, actually there are two different things over here. One is, we cannot say that action doesn't produce reaction anywhere. If Indra is fighting, if Indra doesn't throw his weapon properly against Bali, and Bali will counterattack and Bali may kill him. So the action-reaction correlation is there everywhere, in terms of what I do and what I get. But when we are talking about a broader action-reaction correlation based on karma. For example, now, if a person eats meat, that person may not see any immediate bad reaction happening. But there is a karmic reaction that is going to come eventually, slightly later. So that way, at an immediate level, action-reaction always sequence is there. And there are certain principles of dharma which the devatas also can tap. Devatas, if they do certain activities, for example, dharmic activities, they get certain results by that. Now, can you exactly call it punya? Generally speaking, the scriptures don't refer to punya that way. In the 15th chapter, 3rd verse, Krishna will say that. What is the 3rd verse of 15.3? 15.2 only, not in 3. Urdha moolam adhaschordham prasruta tasya shaka guna pravruddha vishaya pravala ani karmanu bandhini manushya loke. So karmanu bandhini manushya loke. Manushya loke. This earthly planetary system, karmanu bandhini. It is bound by karma. 15.2. So in connection with that verse, the acharyas say that this rigid law of karma applies to the earthly planetary system. But there are principles of dharma which even the devatas can tap into and they can get results by that. So it's not like a 1-0 thing, that there is no law of karma there and there is only law of karma over here. No, actually the principle of accountability for our actions applies everywhere, but the difference is the extent of accountability and the extent of culpability. Now, how much am I culpable for my actions? That will vary depending on where a person is living. So let's move forward now. So after Krishna has said that, so Krishna has now said Urdhvam. But Urdhvam is not the ultimate goal. In the 8th chapter, Krishna has said that A Brahma Bhuvana Loka. 8.15, 16 years said that. And the whole earthly planet, whole universe is a place of misery. So after telling Urdhva, one will go to heavens. Now Krishna will tell how one can attain transcendence in the next 2 verses. And then Arjuna will ask a question about how can one do that. So Krishna will just give a broad principle over here. Nanyam gunebhya kartaram yada drashtanupashyati gunebhyascha param vetti madbhavam sodhigacchati. So na anyam gunebhya kartaram. When one understands that there is no other doer except the modes, yada drashta anupashyati. When drashta, the seer, sees in this way, systematically, anupashyati. That means Krishna is basically referring back to what he talked about Jnana Chakshu in the 13th chapter. Prakrittevacha karmani kriyamanani sarvashah yah pashyatitha atmanam akartaram sa pashyati. So in 13.30 he talked about that same point he's telling over here. One understands that actually everything that is happening in the material world is happening because of the modes. And then that alone doesn't free one from it. One understands that there is some being who is beyond. Gunebhyascha param vetti. That there is some being beyond the modes by taking shelter. It's not stated directly, but the implication is by taking shelter of that being, one can go beyond the modes. Madbhavam sodhi gacchati. Such a person will attain my nature. And what is the advantage of attaining Krishna's nature? He will tell that in the next verse. Gunane tanati tyatrin देहि देह समुद्भवान् देहि देह समुद्भवान् जन्म मृत्यु जरा दुःखैर् मृत्यु जरा दुःखैर् विमुक्तो अमृतमश्नुते विमुक्तो अमृतमश्नुते. So gunan etan atityatreen. When one you'll go beyond the modes, the dehi deha samudbhavan, dehi who has got a deha right now, the soul who has got the body right now, what will happen? Janma mrityu jara dukkhair, birth, death and old age. So these miseries such a person will transcend. Mukto amrutam ashnute, such a person will attain amruta. So in 13.13, Krishna had said, Gyatva geyam yattat pravakshami yajgyatva amrutam ashnute. By knowing this, you will attain amruta. Krishna is reiterating that point over here. Vimukto amrutam ashnute. So the advantage of going beyond the modes is freedom from the cycle of birth and death and the attainment of liberation. So again, this verse makes it clear that just goodness doesn't lead to that, because goodness is urdhvam gachanti sattvastha. Or earlier in the 14th verse he said tad uttam vidam lokan. Uttam vidam lokan, Prabhupada says, refers to Brahma loka, but that also is not liberation. So this is actually very distinctive. Even in the Abrahamic religions, the difference between heaven and the kingdom of God is not very clear, although it's hinted at, but it's not explicitly well defined. So the Bhagavad Gita and the Vedic literature, things become quite clear. There is a transcendental abode which is eternal, and there is a higher planetary system where the enjoyment is more, which is more long living than the earth, but still it is temporary. So Krishna tells that you have to go beyond the modes to attain that. Now Arjuna will ask a question. How does one do that? Arjuna vacha kairlingai strin gunan etan Atito bhavati prabho Kimacharah katham shaitan Trin gunanati vartate. So linga means symbol, characteristic. See, the word linga is also used for Shiva linga, where it refers to the sexual reproductive organ. So when a baby is born, when they want to know the gender, they look at the linga. Now, that's how they come to know that is it a boy or a girl. So linga, that can specifically refer to the symbol that differentiates between male and female, and linga can also refer to characteristics in a generic sense. So kair lingai strin gunanetan. So by what symbols, by what characteristics can one know somebody who has atito bhavati prabho? Oh Master, oh Krishna, how can I know somebody who has transcended the modes? Kimacharah, what is the behavior of such a person? And lastly, katham chaitams. Katham means how. Teen gunanati vartate. How can I go beyond the modes? So in a sense, what is the difference between the first and second question, linga and acharah? So there are three questions. What are the characteristics? What is the behavior? And what are the means for transcending the modes? So in a sense, the linga, if you see how Krishna will answer it, linga refers to the internal characteristics. How a person feels, how a person perceives, how a person senses the world, how a person looks at the world. That is kair linga is. So that is something which we ourselves have to assess. How much am I affected by the difference between heat and cold, by the difference between male and female, by the difference between honor and dishonor. So this is something. So the first answer. So this 21st verse has three questions, and 22-23 is the answer to linga. 24-25 is the answer to acharah. So the questions 14.21 has some questions, and where are they answered? What happened? So 22-23 answers kair lingaha. What are the characteristics? These are inner characteristics. Then 24-25 is Kimacharah, outer behavior. And 26-27 is Katham's Chaitan. How to transcend. And Krishna will answer that by bhakti. So Arjuna asks these 3 questions and Krishna answers them, and this answer in the 14.26-27 will lead to the 15th chapter. So we'll discuss Arjuna's answers in the evening class. Krishna's answers in the evening class. Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande.